Cannolo, it is Sicily. It's definitely a traditional Sicilian dessert. And we want to share exactly this. We want to share a traditional product that can be done with our Australian twist. Cannolo is something that you have to share with your family. Cannoleria try to do exactly that. We try to give a product that you can share with your family, share with your friends. All the important things, it can be happy or can be something sad, it's all around the table. And that's what my grandfather used to say, no matter if you have a little or a lot, food just brings everyone together. You can't go wrong with that. I'm Dario, owner of Cannoleria.
Hello, Nick Negropontis, and hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Abroad show.
Hello, everyone. I was at that I can't say the word, cannoli place on the weekend.
Were you
Preston
really?
Market.
Hey,
My girlfriend loves them.
yes, there you
How
go.
good is that?
That is great.
That's a genuine plug.
That's a great plug and a great testimonial.
How good is that?
I was actually, because I don't think I've had you on a Monday show for a while. So, like, if someone hasn't been on for a while, I usually ask them, like, do you know what a cannoli is? But, mate, you are well and truly versed.
Well loaded. No, I haven't done one of these in a couple of years. Yeah, nice to be back.
Yeah. Well, welcome, mate, and welcome everybody. As I said, this is Nick Negropontis of SEN, and also one half of the Untitled Carlton podcast, which has the Twitter handle Carlton Pod.
Yeah, best Twitter handle in the world at Carlton Pod. Easiest place to find us. But yeah, we still haven't come up with an actual name for the podcast.
Yeah, you kind of have nailed it now. Like it goes to show your name doesn't matter; the content matters.
Correct, especially if the untitled nature of the podcast becomes part of the brand, I guess.
Yeah. We were just chatting off air, but how's off season? What do you do? What happens in your world?
Yeah, so I'm guessing nobody knows who I am. So I'm social media manager at SEN. My job is to basically look after the website and look after the social media and make sure everything is working well and post some content. Obviously, that also includes trade radio, which is the busiest time of the year. And now there's no footy content. There's no cricket content yet. So it's nice. It's nice being in the quiet time of the year.
How many trade periods have you done at SEN?
8. I started in 2017. And I've done the last 8 trade radios and watched it evolve from talkback and some fun chit chat to the full-blown beast that is now. It has exploded.
I was talking about this last week. Was there more of an appetite this year than ever before?
The numbers say so. The numbers certainly suggest that more people have consumed, especially the social media content has gone through the roof. More people are downloading the podcasts. More people are watching it on YouTube. More people are going on the AFL app because it's exclusively their product. So the appetite is growing, despite even if people sort of act like they're too cool for it. It definitely is something that just gets bigger and bigger each year.
Yeah, I definitely learned that this year more than ever. Firstly, the appetite was crazy, and then you'll see a lot of people will comment or they'll say like, oh, get it over and done with. Oh, I hate trade period. And then they'll go out of their way to post on Twitter or Facebook or wherever how much they hate trade period without realizing that those exact posts make trade period more popular every year. It's amazing.
Oh, people love to hate it, but they also love to engage with it. Like you can't post anything trade related on Twitter without it getting maximum reaction. Like people just froth it. They care about their teams. They're passionate about what happens, and every trade is a bad deal. If it isn't an absolute raw to like we kind of got for pick 3, I think most of Carlton Twitter was pretty happy about that one.
Yeah. What did you think of Carlton's off-season acquisitions when it comes to the draft and the trade period overall?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? We gave up basically every asset that we gave up went out the door, and we came back in with pick 3. So like we're heading to the draft with a plan to use pick 3, pick up the Camperalle brothers as they've officially nominated us, and that's really it. Nick Haynes was very quietly brought through the door, but yeah, we gave up the two first round picks to get that done, which was 12 and 14 in the end. And then we also gave up Bowies and Kennedy for not a whole lot. So, it's interesting, isn't it, where they've sort of compressed 5 or 6 assets down into one, which I guess opens up list spots, and we'll see how it goes. Because I'm a bit sheepish on it, because you lose Cunningham, Marchbank, Martin, plus Kennedy, Owies. You give up a few draft picks. Is the depth going to come down, or are they expecting these younger guys to step up? Obviously, they are expecting these guys to step up, but can they do it is the question. Not that the guys leaving were the best players in the world, but you know what I mean? Like, you lose them, and they are capable players 28 to 38 on your list, and you have to replace that somehow. And that's now the job of Nick Austin in this draft.
That's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah, we did the Untitled Carlton pod a few weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks ago now?
2 weeks ago now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's a debate that we'll talk about probably until next year, like the whole win now, win later, think of the long term. Like, does pick 3 necessarily mean you're not wanting to win now? Because, I mean, I think for guys like you and I, or anyone that's our age, the draft is usually synonymous with rebuilding. So it's...
we're going to go through the drafts today. That's part of why we're here. But when was the last time Carlton had a top draft pick and weren't at the bottom of the ladder? It genuinely might never have happened. I don't think we've actually been in this situation in the 21st century.
Yeah. Because we're going to talk about the Camperalle boys, I want to know, what was Scott Camperalle drafted as?
That's a good question.
Because he came into the 95 side as a rookie.
Right. I don't remember that.
He was drafted to Carlton with pick 15 in the 1994 National Draft.
Okay.
He might be the last one.
Well, there you go. That's actually a really interesting situation, isn't it? Because we've been bad for pretty much every year since 2002. So it's kind of been hard to measure that. But no, even in like the last one is, would you say Chris Yarran? Pick 6, 2009?
Yeah.
We weren't good, but we were getting there.
True. We were definitely on an upward trend. Wow, Chris Yarran. There's a whole story on Chris Yarran to be told.
I could talk for an hour about Chris Yarran.
And the what could have been?
Most naturally talented footballer Carlton has had, in my opinion. Just everything he did was lightning.
Do you think it unraveled because he left Carlton? Sorry. Do you think it wouldn't have unraveled for him had he stayed at Carlton, or do you think it was inevitable that it was going to unravel for him?
Yeah, we'll never know, won't we? But I think that whole Malthouse era kind of ripped the soul out of the club a little bit. Garlett, Betts, Robinson being shown the door. Malthouse bringing his people in, and I think that ripped the soul out of the joint.
Yeah, that's true. Well, tonight we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to go through the Camperalle boys. We're going to just touch on them a little bit more. Some more draft thoughts and musings. We're going to talk about the Zack Tuohy interview. Nick, I know you worked heavily on the story, particularly on the back end. We're also going to play a little interactive game with those of you at home. We're going to rank every Carlton draft since 2014, so essentially 10. We are going to grade the trade, talk about Adam Saad, and then we're going to close off talking a little bit about Tom de Koning. And I posted a video not long ago today just asking the question, like, what's a fair and reasonable offer? So lots to get through, and there might be one or two things that pop up as breaking news. You never know what happens on a Monday night, but we will stay tuned. Nick, what do you know about the Camperalle boys?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How they've sort of we've followed them very closely over the last 2 years. I think start of last year was when they first appeared on my radar, when guys like Kevin Sheehan and Mick Ablett were talking about them on SEN, and obviously that caught my ears as a mad Carlton fan. And you do your research into them, and I think a lot of people thought that at least Ben would be probably a back end first round pick this year, and Lucas would be somewhere later in the draft. And it does feel like they have fallen down draft boards this year, and I'm always a bit skeptical with father-son situations because they know where they're getting drafted. So there's no huge incentive to do absolutely everything you can, and there's always incentive for the clubs to say, why don't you ease off a little bit and not show everything he can do, just get through. So I'm always a bit skeptical about draft boards, and clearly Cal Toomey doesn't rate either of them. He doesn't have either in his top 40. The Herald Sun put out their draft ranking, their top 60 prospects earlier in the week. They had Ben at 31 and Lucas at 52. So make of that what you will. I think the most interesting aspect of Ben in particular is where that bid comes, because we obviously traded Kennedy out to get pick 38. Do we actually get to use pick 38, or will that get absorbed into a bid for Ben? I think that is the most interesting question regarding them, because it kind of changes how the whole draft plays out for Carlton. And I think anyone watching this knows that Stephen Silvani is lurking in that early 30s range. Will he throw a bid on the son of his former teammate and throw a spanner in Carlton's works? I think most of us expect him to probably do something like that. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, what are you expecting from these guys in the next couple of years?
Oh, what am I expecting from the Twins? Not a lot, if I'm honest.
Agree.
Not a lot. Am I hopeful? Yeah, I'm very hopeful. But I'm not. I'm glad the chatter quietened down from mid-season. There was a bit of a shitstorm. Everyone was up in arms about the AFL. Apparently, we're going to change the rules or whatever, and like it never happened. There was a bit of a storm in a teacup, and I'm glad that sort of settled down, because it felt like there was too much talk about them. Like, yeah, they're solid, good footballers, but let's just not put too much expectation on them just yet. So I'm hoping, and now that you've mentioned what you said before about all the players that have left, we kind of need one of them to, become a regular.
We need one of them to be able to play some senior footy next year, not necessarily as best 22, but just as a breaking case of 20 injuries again kind of situation. They're really interesting. I think Ben has a chance to be pretty ready-made. 186 centimeters, played a lot of sandful footy. I'm not going to step over Pommy or anyone else who watches draft footage. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the draft. I've seen the highlights that you guys have watched on Twitter and read the bios and the descriptions. I'm not going to pretend to be someone who's crunched draft tape, but they do seem to fit positional needs. Like I've got a depth chart that I update for a Carlton perspective because I'm a big nerd. But we do need to replace Kennedy, and we do need depth on the outside, which is what Lucas can provide. So I think they both fill positional needs. Jack Carroll's another one who's gone out the door, obviously, who leaves a midfield hole. And hey, it's on these guys coming in, pick 3, and I think Cooper Lord is the big one who will get a lot of opportunities next year because of these holes. And hopefully the Camperalle boys can prove people wrong, because as I said, father sons tend to fall down the draft board sometimes unless they're the cream of the crop. Look at Josh Dacos, for example, all Australian wingman. He was picked 56. So these things happen.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go through the draft to the last 10 years soon. And in there, we'll see how many times we've gone to the draft with, 5, 6, 7 seasons later, no one's still playing from that draft. So it is an important time. And I don't want to put limits on them, but I also don't want to have expectations on them. Like whatever we get, we get. And I'm hoping that we can buck a trend a little bit. And, one of them playing 200 games would be unreal. 2 of them would be magical. So,
I mean, think about like the Silvani boys. We had Jack and Ben. Ben obviously didn't play, but we got a 10-year player out of Jack. So maybe think of it from that perspective. If we land 1, great. If we land 2, perfect. But let's ease up on the expectations. Yeah,
absolutely. Do you have any preference from what you've seen from highlights or anything of what we do for pick 3? Like, what do you want? Personally?
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to be a draft cruncher. I'm not going to pretend to know these players intimately. I think through the highlights I've watched and the descriptions I've read and everything in that regard, I kind of want Sid Draper, the SA boy. Speed, burst, point of difference, half forward, mid, that sort of prototypical game-changing mid who doesn't have to get 30 disposals, but maybe he has 18 and 10 score involvements. I know that all the talk is Finbar O'Dwyer. God, we delisted him. What's his name? Finn O'Sullivan. Finbar O'Dwyer. Wow, that's a throwback. I actually wrote.
That is
I've
a
got the
throwback and a
draft.
half, mate.
I've got all the draft guys down here for our ranking later, and I actually wrote Finbar O'Dwyer in it. So that's where that's come from. Hopefully, he's better than Finbar O'Dwyer. But my thought is Finn O'Sullivan seems great. He seems like he could be another sort of, maybe not Sam Walsh, but like a Sam Walsh type of player. I don't know if we need another midfield accumulator, even if he's like the next generation. I would rather roll the dice on someone like a Sid Draper, or if a Jagger Smith is still there. I think that's where I'm leaning. I'll let Nick Austin cook though.
Yeah, I am. I am exactly with what you said. When I watched the highlights of all of them, I thought, okay, which version of these highlights marries up with what would it look like with handballing to Sam Walsh, running, spreading, and I mean, for me, it looks like Draper, but at the same time, I mean, either way, we'll be happy with. I think we'll be happy with whoever we get, and you know what? You know what would be nice if we had the idea of what Paddy Dow was and actually became.
That's funny because I was talking to our good friend Paul Sebastiani about this exact thing. Everything I read about our man Finn O'Sullivan, I just see Paddy Dow. I see the drafted Paddy Dow, like not what he became, but what everyone was talking about at the draft. Strong, powerful, burst, inside mid, can't really kick, but you know he'll get away from stoppage and he's clean, and even like he's like a skinny sort of, still got that teenage body, but that midfield talent. There's a lot of Paddy Dow in it, and that worries me, but it's a completely unwarranted worry. So don't read anything into that.
What do you think about any draftee coming into this version of Carlton compared to, let's say, 2016, 17?
It's a great point. It's a great point because it's the first time, as we were saying, it's a first time a draftee will be walking into Carlton, a top-end draftee walking into a good team with Patrick Cripps, two-time Brownlow medalist, Sam Walsh setting standards. The core of the group is 25 to 30 now. It's not 21 to 25 where it was especially when Wiedering, Mackay, Curnow, when they came in, especially when Walsh came in, even when Dow and O'Brien and SPS came in, the list was young and the leaders were fringe players. Now the leaders are Cripps, Wiedering, Curnow, even guys like Nick Newman setting standards in their late 20s, early 30s. Patrick, I mean, if you're going to listen to anyone, you're going to listen to Patrick Cripps, you're going to listen to Sam Walsh, you're going to listen to, Charlie Curnow. Like, the list is in a very different spot, and I think that's kind of what you were getting at, is they have a much different environment, new head of high performance. They have no experience with any other high performance guys. They come into a new system. That's all they're going to know. And then obviously it's on Luke Power, who was voted one of the best development coaches in footy a couple of years ago. So we'll see what they can do with him.
Yeah. I'm excited to find out. That's for sure. We've still got 3 or so weeks until the draft. So plenty more to come in that regard. Hey, let's touch on Zack Tuohy. Let me take you back first. Actually, I've got a little clip here of some of his early highlights. Goes for about a minute 20, and then can I just say, shout out to old school Carlton media, like OG Carlton media.
Yeah, no, the music and the highlights. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all a bit nostalgic. People our age are a bit nostalgic for that 2011-ish run where the team was actually looking like it could achieve a bit and had quite a few fun players.
Do you remember Ratton's plays of the day?
Yeah, that does sound familiar.
They so I went looking for Zack Tuohy highlights for this chat, and that was just like one video. I went on the Carlton YouTube channel and I started from oldest, and then just like kept scrolling. Wow, they were ahead of the game. They were there. I don't know who was the head of media back then, but the way they were posting, they were really giving YouTube a nudge.
Those I don't know if it was them who uploaded, but there's quite a few like Yaron Bet Scarlett highlight reels that are just I probably watch them twice a year.
Yeah. So you talk to us about the Zack Tuohy interview at SEN, how it came about, and just your thoughts around it.
Yeah, so we're doing a retirement series at the moment where basically Andy Marr sits down with former athletes who have retired this year and just has sort of a 50-minute chat with them. And it's all really good stuff. I would recommend, not to plug, but the SEN YouTube channel has the Dyson Nepple one and the Zack Tuohy one. The podcast page has a few others, including Razor Ray and Matt Corden, which was really interesting. But yeah, Tuohy was one that came about last week, and yeah, he was really open and honest and talking about his exit from Carlton. And I think his exit from Carlton has gotten a bit murkier over the years, mainly because I feel like the relationship between Tuohy and Carlton fans has really broken down in the last few years, especially if you look at the game during the year where there was a few on-field incidents and a few comments made. And, I don't think Carlton was mentioned in his retirement speech or something. I can't remember exactly what the go was there, but people weren't happy about it from a Carlton perspective. And it's all sort of gotten a bit muddy. And then, yeah, Adi comes on this podcast and says, well, he never actually wanted to leave. It was all down to one clause in the contract that he wanted, where he basically said, I've played every game for the last 3 years. My entire salary has basically been match payments. I just want the same pay, but without this, with full security of it being just a contract, not having to rely on match payments. And Carlton said no. He thought Brendan Bolton didn't like him and they didn't get along, apparently, which I thought was a really interesting nugget. And yeah, he felt that the club was pushing him out. So he requested a trade to Geelong. So that's how that played out, according to him. He also dropped a tidbit saying that he's going to release a book, which will have more information about this stuff. So I guess he's saving a few details for that. But no, it was really interesting. It sort of painted an insight into, I don't know what our perspective generally was of the last few years of Brendan Bolton and how the players felt about him, and especially the older senior players. There was always sort of a vibe that a few of the players were really not hugely happy, including Tuohy. But yeah, and here we are, him confirming it all this time later and saying that was part of the reason why he felt forced out of the club.
No, it was a great piece. I watched it. I was completely taken aback by his comments around his relationship with Bolts. Like, I even went and did some digging and found a quote from him in 2016 preseason, and sort of giving him some props and talking about his coaching style, and he's a real teacher and he unifies us. And I'm with you. Like, there's a bit of confusion because like this year he's like tugging the jumper and like giving it to the Carlton fans in the crowd, and then gets a bit from the Carlton side. I think Matt always gives him one in the second time that we played them, and then
I'm gonna miss.
And
Matt.
now he's he's a true blue bleeding Irishman all of a sudden again. So it's interesting. But I think two things about the whole story. Number one, isn't it funny how things happen, decisions get made, and we are told at the time that the decisions are made. We all pass judgment, but ultimately we don't know what the real outcome of the judgment will be until it's time. So like, let's just take Tuohy, for example. At the time, you either had an opinion, you were for it, or you were against it. Then you get to like now when you can actually look back and judge it because you've got all the facts in front of you. But by the time you get to this point now, it's like, oh, move on. It's done. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Now it doesn't matter.
So frustrating.
No, but I can see it from like, let's take Tuohy. Let's say Tuohy's perspective is 100% how it was. He wanted to stay. The club didn't really want him. They offered him a contract, but it was like lowballed and not what he wanted, so he left. If Tuohy let's play the game where Tuohy stays at Carlton. He just accepts the contract and he stays. He's a one-club player. How much? We don't really need Zack Tuohy in that 2015 to 2020 patch where we're going to be on the bottom of the ladder anyway. Like the idea of, I can see from the club's perspective where they're like, we can get a first-round pick for Zack Tuohy. Yes, we have to give up a second-round pick back, and yes, we have to take on Billy Smets, which was the funny part of that trade. But yeah, we get a first-round pick. We get to give up a player who probably won't be a huge factor in whether we win 2 games or 3 games in 2018, 2019 range. So I can see it from the club's perspective where they think we've got an asset here, we can give him up, get something in return, as they did with Lockie Henderson and a few others for different reasons. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how he probably wanted to stay. Carlton fans probably wanted him to stay, or definitely wanted him to stay. But the club made a tough call, and it probably strained relationships there for a few years.
Well, I can't help but feel that we're in one of those forks in the road now with, in 10 years' time, does Matt Kennedy release a book? Does Matt always release a book about what happened?
Yeah, Kennedy's interesting. I mean, I put the screenshot on Twitter as it was happening during the elimination final of his facial reaction to being subbed out, and it felt disrespectful at the time, and it still feels a bit like you brought in 3 underdone players. You have 5 small forwards playing, but you're going to sub off Kennedy for the ruckman, a guy who has given his all this season and flew back up after the birth of his child, and you're going to sub him off after 20 minutes of game time for him. Like, it felt like a relationship ending at that point, and I think he had every right to seek a fresh start, and hopefully we get to utilize pick 38. Otherwise, it feels like we've just sort of burnt a bridge and given up a really good player for nothing.
Yeah. That's the fear, and that's a fair fear. It's genuine, especially if we end up burning the pick.
That's it.
It's like,
I don't know how it works. Like, does it, like, if Ben is bid on at 32 by Sauce, we don't lose 38 necessarily. We get a pick back. I can't remember how it works. Like, we get like 40 something back, or I don't know.
I would definitely need to confirm that.
Ask Pommy or something.
I'll ask Pommy. Yeah, if Pommy was in the chat, he would confirm. But
I'm not sure how it works. But I know if you give up a certain amount of picks to match, you get some picks back later in the draft, depending on how much you're giving up. But I don't know the exact details of it.
Yeah, fair. So that is that. Should we play a little game?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
What we're going to do, with those of you watching at home as well, we are going to rank the last 10 drafts for the Carlton Football Club.
We're doing this in honor of the 2014 draft class, the worst draft class of all time.
So I'm going to share that. We're going to do this together. We are going to... Okay. So basically what we've done is we've started the task for you. So 2014, Nick, do you want to just run through the worst?
Yep. Yeah, actually, I've got the whole thing. I literally wrote it all out on my phone, and I sent it to you earlier today. So
yeah,
2014 was more than just the draft. It was everything. It was all the ins and all the outs. So the players who went out the door in the 2014 offseason, we lost Jared Waite to North Melbourne. Didn't get any free agency compensation. He goes on to play 100 games for North, and he's awesome there. They trade Jeff Garlett for nothing. They cut Mitch Robinson. Heath Scotland retires mid-season. Nick Duigan retired in the preseason. Does anyone you remember that? Where he kicked the 4 goals in the elimination final and then retired in the summer. It was like, nah, can't be bothered. I'm injured. Don't really want to do it. And he hung up the boots. We should have known that was a moment to think, what's going on here? They delisted Brock McLean. They gave up pick 7 for Christian Jack, who that didn't work. That didn't work at all. And they delisted Kane Lucas, who was picked 12 like 3 years before this. And we fired Josh Bootsma, who was a first-round pick, 2 years before this, for being a little shit. So those were the outs, which is not great when you're burning basically 3 first-round picks on Bootsma, Lucas, and Christian Jack. We brought in Liam Jones. Great work, all. That worked out really well. And then everything else is we brought in Matthew Dick, Christian Jack, Mark Wiley, and then we also brought in Jason Tutt, and then in the rookie draft, Billy Gowers, Brad Walsh, Tom Fields, and Fraser Russell. But our 4 national draft picks. And as someone who was working for the Carlton VFL time in this era, I watched them all very closely. I can tell you, no good. Blaine Burkhurst, with pick 19, immediately revealed that he hated Mick Malthouse and had tweets out about him. Dylan Viojo Rainbow, still the greatest name in Carlton history to not play a game. Clem Smith, who someone wrote a draft book about or something and just didn't play at all, left while he was still in contract to go home to Western Australia. And Jaden Foster, who's probably a trivia question, who did Carlton draft with their last pick in 2014? And I doubt anyone would get that right. So I think that's the worst ins and outs of all time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but did we pick Dylan Viojo Rainbow 1 or 2 picks before Tuke Miller?
Yeah, no, literally. If you look at the 2014 draft, look at it right now, and pretty much every pick we make is surrounded.
Oh my God.
Look
Oh
at the
my
pick.
God.
Can you please
Oh
read out
my-
the pick before Blaine Burkhurst? If you can please read that out.
Okay. The pick before Blaine Burkhurst was Isaac Heaney at pick 18.
Yeah, he goes all right. I mean, yes, he was an academy player, and
Academy
obviously
player.
you can't draft him a pick before your own. But it's pretty funny how Sydney got Isaac Heaney and we got Blaine Burkhurst.
Wow, Jack Steele was pick 24 that year. To be
Yep.
fair, he was also an academy pick. Wow, so Dylan Viojo Rainbow like pick 28, and the
Yep.
very next pick was Tuke Miller, and the pick after that was Braden Maynard. So
I'm pretty sure there's a sneaky like Harris Andrews in there somewhere as well.
Harris, yeah, I think you're right.
Like right after one of our picks.
Harris Andrews. Oh, mate, Clem Smith at pick 60, Harris Andrews at pick 61.
This is what I mean. It's why it's one of the funnier drafts of all time, because every one of our picks is followed up by like the best player of the last 10 years.
So the 4 picks, Boakhurst, Viojo, Rainbow, Smith, and Foster play a total of 32 games between.
I'm pretty
the
sure
four of them.
Boco's played most of those as well.
Yeah,
Foster never
25
played,
games.
and Vioja Rainbow never played.
So bad.
The other thing in all that is we obviously traded pick 7 for Christian Jack, and that pick was, well, it ended up being Paula Hearn, who's your GWS selected. Not necessarily who we could have picked. Peter Wright was right there. Liam Duggan, Lockie Weller, Jake Lever, future Carlton players, Jared Garlett and Sam Durden. Like, there's Carl Langford. That's another future Carlton player, Caleb Marchbank. And Jared Pickett. Jesus, a lot of future Carlton players here.
It's quite bizarre that the players we ended up getting from this draft, we ended up getting Jared Pickett, and he plays 17 games and is one of the, well, he and Marchie are two of the three of the four lowest games players of the top 10.
Yep. Yeah, we ended up with like 6 of the top 30 picks. Hugh Goddard, we had him as well.
Oh, God.
Who else did we end up with? God, this is Mitch McGovern is in here. This is one of the funnier drafts of all time. Mark Pitnet is in here. Bro, we drafted him. Yeah. We ended up with everyone in this draft except for the players who actually ended up being good. No shade at our boy Pitter. But
so we've got the worst
so
out of the way. That is clearly going to be the worst. 2015 will clearly be the best.
Yes.
Do you want to run through 2015 and
I think 2015 is what I like to call Sauce's saving grace. If you take away the 2015 draft, he gets a huge F grade for his time at Carlton. Yeah. But if you include the 2015 draft, you could give him an A because he took Wiedering with pick 1, and that was a 50-50 toss-up at the time between Wiedering and Josh Shackey. People were saying it could go either way. And he took Wiedering, 10 out of 10. He then took Harry Mackay at pick 10 and Charlie Kono at pick 12. In a draft where you had a bunch of key forwards, you had a bunch of different kinds of players. We needed Essendon to pick up Aaron Francis. We needed Melbourne to pick up Sam Wiedemann. We needed Brisbane to pick up Josh Shackey. For these exact 2 key forwards to fall to us, and Sauce grabbed them both. Great job. He picked up David Cunningham at the end of the first round, which obviously hasn't worked out as well as we wanted, but that's because of injuries. Like, there's not anything Sauce could have predicted about that. And then he picked up Jack Silvani in the 50s when Essendon put in a bid for him. So, and that's worked out pretty well as well. When you pick a player in the 50s and they play, 100 games for the club, should probably end up at 150-ish. I think that's always a huge win. What we'll notice as a bit of a trend as we go on through these drafts is Sauce had absolutely no idea with the rookie draft. There's basically no rookie draft picks that ever end up being anything for us. So we really just have to focus on the national draft.
Yeah. So there's the best, there's the worst. I did like your idea of doing it like a draft. So like you pick, I pick. I'll let you start. So like you can pick and we can maybe debate just like the next best.
Let's say I've picked 2015. What do you think is number 2? Because I struggled with number 2. Mainly because it's basically like which one player did we draft good in that 1 year?
So I hear what you're saying. So like obviously Sam Walsh, you nail pick 1 and he goes on and he's played.
Yeah. But how many points do you get for nailing the clear pick 1, which was Sam Walsh at the time? Like,
it's a good point.
How much do you put into that? Whereas, like, for example, 2017, you blow the 2 top 10 picks, but you get Tom De Koning at pick 30. How do you balance that up? Like, that's why I thought this would be interesting as like a draft, because I think it's actually pretty hard.
So chat will ask you as well, who's the next best draft after 15? So 18, you've got Walsh. 17, you mess it up because 7 years later, both players in the top 10 are not there. 22, you pick 2 young boys who are in your 22 a couple of years later. But
that's it. Are we also like, are we doing it on right now? Like, are we weighting it more towards what's happening right now? Because you could also say 2016 SPS was all right for a bit. Fisher was a good pick at 27, and Tom Williamson played for a little bit. Like, I'm guessing we're weighting it more towards what's happening now. So, as you said, 2022 was a good draft, but yeah, 2018, 2017, 2019, none of them are that good.
You make a good point about 2016, because at the end of the day, Samo did play 94 games. Fisher played 107. And he was picked 27. Oh,
I like Jason in the chat. They're all bad. Yes, we know.
This is going to be harder than what I thought it would be. Well, okay. What if I ask you this? Do we have like a clear second worst?
Oh, I don't think we have a clear second worst either. But I think you could sort of, I think the next 3 worst are the 2020s drafts where we had no picks really. So put aside 2022 where we did really well. Yep. I think you're deciding between 2021 where our only draft choice was Jesse Motlop, 2023 where we picked up Moyer and Wilson. Like, how do you judge that just yet? And then 2020 where we picked up Corey Durden and Jack Carroll as our only 2 picks. Like, and we had nothing in the sort of top 30. So to me, for me, the number 9 slot is 2020 where we picked up Corey Durden and Jack Carroll, only because I don't think Corey Durden's the best 22 player. And Jack Carroll's been delisted. So we sort of haven't really left 2020 with a whole heap that's helping us now, or has really helped us a huge amount. So there's no, it depends.
I agree with that. I think that's fair, especially now that we know that Jack Carroll's out of the system.
Yeah.
I think... Who was 2021? What did we do there? That was
2021 was just Jesse Motlop. That was the only pick we had.
That was the only pick we had.
That was the only pick we had in 2021.
Okay, I'll pause that one there for a sec.
How do you rank 2018 lower because Sauce gave up the future first to draft Liam Stocker? Does that impact how well you rate 2018?
I think at the end of the day, I know that Walsh was obviously like the safe pick and clear standout. Like a guy that's played, what's he played now? 150?
Ooh,
Walsh? 100? 100 odd. He's played 100.
He's definitely played 100.
119 games.
Yeah.
Like he didn't, like we didn't fluff the pick. We got it right.
No, like, and the top of that draft was very, very good, but yeah.
Yeah. This is just tentative. 18 is here just tentatively because I do think something needs to be said about, I think 22? It was 16. 22, yes. 22 and 16.
Yeah. 22 we drafted Ollie Hollands at pick 11, Lockie Cowan at 30, and then we finished the draft with Binns and Lemmy. And I still think Binns is going to be a 50, 60, 100 game Carlton player. So I think 2022 is sneaky good. We didn't have any of those prime picks, and we didn't land a superstar. But I think Cowan's going to play 100 games for the club. Holland's going to play 100 games for the club. And Binns has the potential to play 100 games for the club. So to me, that deserves to be top 3 or 4.
What if we go like this? And then 16 goes here.
Yeah. SPS, Fisher, McCready, Paulson, Williamson, Kerr was 2016. Mm-hmm. And I still think we gave up on Pat Kerr too quickly. Like, I know he hasn't had an AFL career afterwards, but he was leading the VFL goal kicking, got injured, and then we delisted him. It was a bit weird.
It is weird. So 17 is, well, I mean, completely messed it up with Dow and O'Brien, but some saving grace with De Koning.
but not Angus Shoemaker. No.
Ugh, so there's one there.
But that's the thing. You could look at every single one of these drafts except 2015 and 2022, and we drafted one guy, and we messed up every other pick, and we didn't do anything in the rookie draft. It's the same thing every year.
Oh, it's so bad.
To me, 2017, you have to grade harshly because we messed up the 2 top 10 picks, because you drafted Dow over LDU, and because you drafted O'Brien because he was the next best available midfielder when he just wasn't. Then you have 2019. Do you grade that harshly because we had a pick, I can't remember what, pick 11 or something, and we traded that back to get 19 and 21 to get Kemp and Philp, but we missed out on Sam DeConning, Cosy Pickett, and Will Day by doing that. So how do you rank that decision? And obviously Philp didn't end up doing anything, and I don't even know who Ramsey is, who we drafted in 2019, but he's long gone. So
fun fact about Sam Ramsey. We did when we did lockdown, I did like a one-on-one FIFA tournament with a couple of players, and he said yes. I messaged all of them, and he said yes.
Yes. So he had nothing else to do.
I think I beat him. I think I beat him in that match. Yeah. But I always appreciated him giving me time for that.
Respect to him.
This actually tells a bit of a story.
Yeah. Spring it. What's the story?
Well, we suck at the draft.
That was the whole point of the exercise.
2022, where have we got it? Okay, that's fine.
2022, tick. 2018, you started great, but then you gave a future first pick for Liam Stocker, who you delisted 3 years later. 2015, big tick. 2021, you drafted Jesse Modlop and nothing else. Is that, I don't know.
So you have one pick in the draft in 2021, and that's pick 27. And you get Motlop, and I think most of us would say if he's fit and firing and at his best, he's right there. Like
I think this is a wasted year for Jesse Motlop because of the injuries. Yep. I think he'll be fine. Mm-hmm. So I'm still kind of bullish. Do we maybe put 2023 above 2021? I don't know. I've got a feeling Ashton Moyer will be maybe on par or ahead of Motlop in the next couple of years. Like, what do you reckon?
I totally get what you're saying. I do have the same faith that draft will be better. I guess because you've got more players and they're still on the list.
It's Moyer and Wilson versus Motlop, I guess, and Billy Wilson didn't play, but he was close a few times. Yeah, I don't know. What does the chat reckon? Chat
reckons Jason says this is why we haven't won a grand final.
Yep. No, why we haven't won a grand final is draft 2013. No, not 2013. 2013 was great. Forget about 2013. 2012, 2011, 2010, 2009, 2008. Everything between Cruiser and Wiedering, with the exception of Cripps, was the worst drafting of all time. We could do a whole separate. I'm happy to come on and do a full hour about Carlton's draft between 2008 and 2014, and just the worst run of drafts of all time, and Patrick Cripps. We got a 2-time Brownlow medalist and nothing else for 6 years. I don't know whether you would make that trade, but it's so funny. That's why we didn't win a flag in 2011. I'll stand by it.
Free agents and the delisted free agents have been a little bit better, and the trades have been a bit better in the last couple of years. So we're talking, Chera, Saad, McGovern.
Well, that's part of why we have that.
Yes. So I think, we completely messed up 2 top 10 picks. It has to be like there.
Yeah.
I think that's the way.
When you think about it, we not only messed up the Dow pick, but then we had to give up a top 10 pick in 2019 to correct the mistake and bring in Chera, which then cost us a top 10 pick as well. So we basically gave up pick 3 and pick 9 for Chera because we botched the Dow pick. We botched the top 6 pick in Sam Petrevsky, which we turned into Lewis Young. And then we botched pick 10 in O'Brien, which we just delisted. So it's a lot of draft capital there that's just flowing out the door.
And we've also come back into these drafts to get players years later. So Chera's obviously one. Elijah Holland is one from the 2020 draft. Who are the others? I reckon there's one more.
Yeah, no, there definitely is. Like most of the GWS guys who Sauce drafted, because he hunts after guys he drafted. And yeah, there's been a few where the Setterfield was one where we picked up later. It was a high pick. Yeah, McGovern as well. So we've sort of retrospectively patched it together, but it's cost us more draft picks. And I think the other interesting thing about this period of drafting is, like, name the picks we nailed after pick 40 at any point in any of these drafts, and I've got them all here. And after pick 40, it's like the best pick we made was Jack Silvani, who was a father-son, or Tom Williamson. That's about it. Jackson Binns could be the best. It's not Finbar O'Dwyer, but
it hasn't been kind. But
no,
you kind of like, yeah, you're one draft away from really ramping up your list for a couple of years, which was what 2015 was. Like you hope you almost have 3 200+ game players. Well, they will be if they're all, staying healthy.
2015 is the best draft class of any club. It's like when Port drafted Butters and Rosie in that one draft, or Hawthorn when they drafted Buddy and Lewis, when they drafted Buddy and Roughhead, and Buddy, Roughhead and Lewis in one draft, or then they drafted Mitchell and Hodge in one draft. They've done that a few times actually.
Yeah.
Whereas, that 2015 draft is the only reason why Sauce is remembered fondly at all, I think, because he certainly messed up a couple of those trades like Papley and Canelio, and he messed up Shield, but that's kind of worked out all right. But it's interesting, isn't it? When you go back through it, it's grim reading.
That was awful. That was awful. But like,
is everyone excited about pick 3 now? Or
oh god. Well, you can't get 2 pick 3s wrong in a row, can you? Like,
no, it's a completely different person in charge. I think Sauce had Paddy Dow listed at number 1 in his draft rankings at the time, ahead of Angus Brayshaw, ahead of ahead of Andrew Brayshaw and Cam Rayner, and Luke Davies-Uniacke, of course. So hopefully Nick Austin and his pretty blue eyes just know what they're doing.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that's that. I want to get your thoughts looking back on the Adam Saad deal. So I did a video last week around it, centered around pick 7, which became pick 8, which actually blew out to, I think, pick 10.
It did become pick 10, yes.
So what's your take on the Adam Saad deal now that we've got plenty of information now to make the call?
Well, we know everything. We know that it was literally Adam Saad for Zach Reed. That's the trade, because pick 48, 78, and 87 were not used. Sauce and Dodoro argued over this trade for 10 days over the inclusions of picks 78, 48, and 87, and then didn't use them. Didn't use them at all. Picks not used per this website. So I'm glad that Sauce went real hard to get those extra picks in, because we did give up a top 10 pick for Adam Saad, which on paper, and I know a lot of non-Carlton people would look at that and have a chuckle, but they don't probably realize how good Saad has been for us in terms of whenever he touches the ball, things happen. He's a great one-on-one defender. You trust him to win a one-on-one contest. You trust him with a ground ball. You trust him with ball in hand. I think Adam Saad has been a phenomenal pickup for Carlton. And when you consider the player we gave up for him was Zach Reed, who was the 10th pick in that draft, and he's a key position player who has had no injury luck and barely featured for the Bombers. I think that's been a huge win for us. If you look at the rest of that draft, so let's just get that up. So let's say we had pick 10 and we didn't want a key position player. We wanted the next available midfielder. That's like a Tanner Brun or a Tom Powell or a Connor Stone, or Finn McRae. They're kind of the next pure midfielders in the draft. I'd rather have Adam Saad pretty comfortably. So, no, I think we nailed it.
I think so too. Yeah. I mean, he went on to become All-Australian, which I've seen some comparisons to the Houston situation, which it's a bit different. Actually, it's very different. Houston's a 2-time All-Australian. Saad wasn't an All-Australian at the time. He goes on to become an All-Australian. Now, is Houston going to go on to be a 3, 4, 5-time All-Australian? Time will tell.
But
knowing what we do now, I was happy with the Saad deal. And then I guess just to round off the chat, I did a video hours ago, uploaded it around De Koning.
Yes,
and it's centered around
interesting.
Yeah, it's centered around this little bit from SEN actually, and I'll raise the question here as well.
So De Koning though, whose contract was for 2 years to coincide with free agency.
He's a bit more than a ruckman though.
What do you think he's worth? What do you think Carlton are willing to pay? Clearly, it's going to be if they get the commitment.
There's a walk-away price.
A long-term contract. This is a big.
Yeah, but there's a walk-away price. Once again, it's the similar discussion we were having around Tim English. I mean, at the start of last year, the numbers that were being floated for Tim English were extraordinary, and then by the halfway point, they're going, I don't reckon Tim English is going to get what he thought he was going to get, and he ends up staying for what we are told is a lot less. There is a ceiling on what ruckman can earn. And I wouldn't be going more than, I know a few years ago I said he's the next $1 million player, and he's definitely worth more because he can go forward and he can rest as a forward, which definitely helps, and he's important. But are you going to pay more than 800,000 for a ruckman?
So he's 25.
Are you going to pay more than 800,000?
Yep,
you are.
Yeah,
as a rival or as a Carlton.
I just think that's what he'll go for, whether it's at Carlton or whether
he's
it's
going to get
else.
more to leave. So
yeah, well, definitely more than 800
what's
at
the
Carlton.
staying price and what's the leaving price?
So what's the average wage now going forward? 400. Yeah, it'll eventually be 520, I think, in the final year of the new CBA. So I think you've got to pay him more than 800, don't you?
I'd be nervous to pay him more than 800.
I love Kane. He's my guy.
He's great. I think he's great for football. I also think it raises a few things. 800 has the figure 800K. Let's just take that as a figure.
It doesn't mean what it used to mean.
Yeah, and that's only 4 years ago, 5 years ago from today. And in 4 or 5 years from today, in 2028, it won't be as much. So before we get into Tom, I want to open up the question to you and the audience. What do you think AFL players should be getting paid?
Yeah. So the median AFL player wage in 2027 will be $530,000. So the average player will be worth $530, up from, say, I think it was like 420 now and like 360 pre-COVID, 370 pre-COVID. So if you think about 800K 5 years ago, which I think we're all judging this on, that's sort of double player salary worth. But now in 2027, when this deal will probably start, not when it'll start, but when it'll be sort of in its middle, 800K is just above 200K above average salary. So we need to shift the mindset a bit here, because 800K is not, and you're not breaking the bank by paying 800K. You're paying a player a B plus to A minus player is 800K. Harry Perry is on 900K at Collingwood apparently. So I think Tom De Koning is definitely going to be worth $1 million plus. The question is, how many $1 million plus players can you have on your list at one time, which is what another point Kane has raised previously, where if you've got Cripps, Walsh, Wiedering, Mackay, Curnow, and De Koning all on $1 million plus, that's probably a third of your salary cap right there. And is that feasible when building a premiership list? We'll find out. But yeah, if we're going to keep Tom De Koning, it's probably going to be a 6-7 year deal worth $6-7 million. That's probably just what it's going to be. And I think that's fair. I think that's reasonable for someone who'd be a top 5 ruck in the game.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I generally am not in favor of a deal that's longer than 5 years, generally.
No, I agree.
Because I just think there's something in the psychology of a player who's got that much security. Now, on the one hand, I get it. Star players, look after them. I mean, there are certain players, you want them to play forever, but there's just something about the psychology of a player who's out of contract or coming up to a period of time where they're out of contract, and that fear factor, that pressure, if you want to call it, to perform starts increasing, and then doing what's right for the player and trusting them. And I think there's certain players who don't get complacent. I think Jacob Wiedering's a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
And he always improves. I don't really think I've ever had to worry about Cripps getting complacent. He might have been injured, but not complacent.
I think Harry Mackay has ticked that box as well this year because he had his best year this year.
Yep. So in my mind, I'm thinking, 5 years, 6 years, like I get it. And then there's also this new mechanism. Well, it's not really a new mechanism. It's within the rules. The longer the contract, the more security the club has in the event that a trade is to be facilitated down the track. Because players in contract, the trade's worth more for your club.
It is. And it's also, as Kane was saying, like, he is at the end of the day a ruckman. Like, you can find ruckman a dime a dozen. Like, Hawthorn have plucked Lloyd Meek out of Freo for a third-round pick, and he's probably a top 10 or 11 ruckman in the game now. We did it with Mark Bidnett. We gave up nothing for him, and I know he's half the player Tom De Koning is, but you're also paying half what Tom De Koning is worth. So could you say to Tom De Koning, hey, we're going to let you walk in free agency, we're going to get first-round pick compensation, and then we're going to go and get, Ned Reeves from Hawthorn, or we're going to go and get, someone else from a depth player from a depth club. Like, do we go and put Braden Pruce on our list? Like, they're a quarter of the player that Tom De Koning is. But how important is a ruckman? Can you pay a ruckman that much money and win a flag? The only modern example is Max Gawn. It's the only modern example.
And
every other,
he is a generational ruck. Like,
he's a generational player. Yeah. Every other example of a premiership ruckman has been, either a bargain basement player like a Nathan Vardy, or just a good role player. And you can probably think of a dozen of them. Like, even Brisbane, like Oscar McInerney was not a player who was highly drafted and highly paid. He's risen up the ranks, and he's probably getting there in terms of pay. But and I know he didn't play in the grand final, but you know what I mean. Like, the best ruckman, the highest paid ruckman, don't usually end up there. So from a list build point of view, can you afford to do it? But can you also afford to let the talent go who you've been developing for 8 years? Probably not. So yeah, it's an interesting one. They'll re-sign him. They won't even have this conversation, but it is something to think about.
Yeah, so your gut feel is for sure he'll stay?
Well, our good friend, if you listen to the Carlton pod that we put out a couple of weeks ago, our good friend Paul Barbazzo is very confident that Tom De Koning will re-sign and might even re-sign earlier than people expect. I don't know. I'm just relaying what he said on our podcast. So I think that the earlier it gets done, the better. But I also know that the last time, whenever a key player is out of contract, they tend to play their best footy for about 10 to 12 weeks. So maybe you ride that for a bit and see where it ends up, because we've got the key signature of Wiedering, and now the other two are De Koning and Chera. And can you lock them in? Can Chera get some good footy under his belt? Those are sort of the questions.
I definitely am with you there. I don't fear that he'll leave, which is weird, because I probably should a little bit. But I just think, I don't know, like, you are so looked after if you're a Carlton player. On the field, off the field, you're a part of a network that just serves you way beyond football. I think there's a low-key benefit that doesn't get spoken about, like the whole Carlton in business thing. Like, I really do think once you leave football and get into corporate world or just business in general, like, there is something there for you, whether you're looking for work experience or whatever the case may be. I have no issue that every club has their value proposition. I think Geelong, everyone's speculating about Geelong's, and all of a sudden Chris Scott has oh mate, that's amazing.
Shady.
That's amazing.
It's
He's got a job
like that. Vizzy like.
Yeah.
And Adam Simpson running a Henry Jacks over in the West, like that's dodgy.
Yeah. So I think we have our own. These big clubs have their own version of it, and so I don't worry too much about what Carlton can give Tom. And I think it's not just about your playing salary. There is a bigger picture to it. So
if you think about the last time Tom De Koning came out of contract, I'd given up. I thought he was gone. I thought he was going to Sydney on big money, or Geelong on big money, or wherever else. I can't remember where he was linked, but I thought he was gone. And then he re-signed, and Good thing he did. He signed that 2-year deal to take himself to free agency, which was smart. And then we saw this year he played the best footy of his career. He was our best player. He was the best player on our team, while we were second on the ladder for 5 weeks there. And then he rolled his ankle against GWS and hurt himself further against North, and that was it.
Well, you did mention when he re-signed. So this is what he said at the time of re-signing, right?
The position I'm in at the club now and the position we're in, it was a pretty easy decision for me in the end, and I'm stoked to have it done now and be able to move on and focus on my footy a bit more as well. As a player, you try to stay away from reading anything and watching anything, but obviously there's things you can't avoid, and I was just lucky enough to have the right people in my corner, my family, friends. Like, I've got a great support network, and even Cripper was able to help me through because he's been through similar things. Cripper was huge. Like, it's always a bit of an awkward one with contracts, and he pretty much just said, take your time. He's been through it as well. It's a big life decision in the end, and he just wanted to make sure I made the right decision for me. And obviously in the end, like, that was signing at Carlton. Good to get the win, and it was a huge win in front of a big crowd. And I'm sponsored by the cheer squad, so every time I'm down in the forward line, they're always starting chants and whatnot, and they've been great for me. So it was a huge win and really exciting for the whole club. I think what we're starting to build at the moment, like, we're starting to build a tough physical brand of footy that, and our identity's really been on show for the last month or so. So I'm just really keen to be a part of that. Whether it be playing forward or ruck, I've just been really enjoying my footy at the moment, and the coaches have backed me in and really believed in me, which is huge for me. So hopefully just to grow my own game individually, but also be a part of a successful team.
Playing alongside Mark Pitnet as well, he re-signed earlier in the year. What's it like running out with him?
Yeah, it's good. He brings that real physical brand of footy that we're after, and I think our skill sets kind of match each other, which is good. They complement each other out there. So he goes in and bashes them up, and then I go in and try and jump over them. We're trying to still build that partnership and make it as best as we can. But I'm really enjoying my time with him and working with him around the club and that sort of stuff. So it's been good.
Yeah, that partnership. I mean, he's kind of just taken that title now, hasn't he?
Yeah, he certainly has taken that title. But no, it's interesting. I always don't know how much to read into interviews like that with the Carlton website or with any club media website. It's very put together, very scripted, and they say what they need to say. And we even saw players just say whatever they're told to say in front of the media nowadays, just to move on and get on with it. And that's fair enough. So who knows? I think he'll resign. I'm pretty confident that he won't leave, but at the same time, I won't be up in arms if he does, because I think list build wise, I don't think it's the end of the world to lose a ruckman and not pay them the world. But he could just be our best player next year. Like, there's a world where that patch of form from this year carries over, and if he's fully healthy and fit, and he's just the best player on the team, and you pay him accordingly.
That's true. Nick Negropontis, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for setting aside an hour with us.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me, Terry.
No worries. It's been good to chat. What happens in the next couple of weeks for you now? Like, peak off season before draft?
Peak off season. It's beautiful. Nothing's happening. It's great. Nice and quiet at work. Cricket season's about to ramp up, which is great times in the office. Great times maybe heading to the G for Boxing Day. So that's all good. Draft as well. Maybe we'll sneak out another Carlton pod with Paul and I. I definitely have to come on here to repay. You've come on our podcast twice this year, so you need to come back on here and repay the favor a bit. So no, it's good. All is going well.
So just for those who haven't, I mean, surely everyone watching is aware of the pod. Where's the best place to listen to the podcast?
Wherever you get your podcasts, just search Untitled Blues Podcast or at Carlton Pod on Twitter, and you'll find us there. Hopefully the next episode we put up will be post-draft. You can listen to me, Terry, Paul, and Paul Barbaza having a good old chat post-trade period as well. That's up now. You can find our chat with Luke Sayers from earlier in the year as well, which was a really, really interesting chat. So, yeah, go give us a listen.
Very good. All right, that's us for tonight, the 28th of October, 2024. Speak to you next week, guys, or throughout the week. Go Blues.
Go Blues.